So first of all, welcome everybody. Welcome to this Unstoppable Live. We try to do these once every month, but we've had a little bit of a lapse, but we're picking those up again. Today, we are going to be talking about driving SaaS growth with integrations. And I had the pleasure of meeting Brandon. I think we met like last year. We were talking, and then I saw him in person at our Unstoppable LA dinner, and we were already coordinating this Unstoppable Live. And I thought it would be really cool to do a session together on integrations because it's so top of mind. It's a growth driver, a strategic driver, and in so many different ways. So Brandon, welcome to Unstoppable Live. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, TK. I appreciate it.
So we have a full packed agenda. We have like an hour set. We're going to talk through a bunch of things, and we'll have some time for Q&A. So if you guys have questions on anything that we're talking about, just queue it up in the Q&A button, and we'll get to those at the right time, and I'll queue them up. But maybe let's just start from the top. I want to get to talking about how everyone in this call can drive growth for their SaaS businesses using integrations. But before we jump into that, I want to talk a little bit around how you got into doing what you do. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile. Two fun facts. One, somehow you jumped from being an organizing director to all of a sudden you are a creative director to like a mobile developer. So that was one fun fact. And then you started a company. The other cool thing I saw is your last company, PolyMail and Paragon. As of today, according to LinkedIn, they're both 3 years and 9 months. You were there for each of those. So it makes 3 years, 9 months in PolyMail, 3 years, 9 months in Paragon. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into doing what you do, and what you're doing at Paragon right now, and then we'll jump into the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. So as TK mentioned, I started my career as a developer, as a developer and a designer. And when I graduated college about 10 years ago, I started a company with my now co-founder, Ishmael, my co-founder of Paragon, and we started a software development agency. So actually we built products for other companies like Uber and Universal. And this is kind of how I started my career and started getting into software and startups and eventually SaaS. So, we worked on this business, building products for other companies. I was there for about a year and a half, and then eventually went on to starting my own SaaS company, which was PolyMail. And at a high level, PolyMail was an email productivity app. Many of you are probably familiar with Superhuman, so I like to think that we were superhuman before superhuman. I worked on PolyMail for 3 years and 9 months, apparently, exactly. Eventually, transitioned over to Paragon around 2019. That's when I reconnected with Ishmael, and we looked back at all the products that we had built in our careers. And, integrations being one of the biggest pain points that, we and I myself had experienced, especially at PolyMail. And, as, we were trying to sell more B2B and move up market and sell enterprise, one of the biggest, requests and really blockers for us at the time was integrations. Customers were asking for integrations with CRM, with Salesforce, HubSpot. And every time it would take us months and months to build these integrations. And so, when we started Paragon, we realized that this is a problem that virtually every software company has today. And as the SaaS ecosystem has grown exponentially over the past few years, there are now thousands of apps in, the ecosystem. And, we saw that companies were spending millions of dollars in engineering to build and maintain these integrations on their own. There was still really no default solution in the market besides building in-house. And so, we saw an opportunity to really build what could become the Stripe or the Plaid for SaaS integrations. And there was really no one who had done that or who had solved that problem at the time. And so that's how we started Paragon. And that's our vision for what we hope to accomplish with Paragon today.
It's so interesting because integrations it's one of those things where you're on a sales call and inevitably the customer's like, so do you guys like integrate with, and in your mind, you're like, don't say HubSpot, don't say HubSpot. And then they're like, do you integrate with HubSpot? And you're like, oh, it's on the roadmap. So integrations is one of those things that's like top of mind for every SaaS founder. And maybe paint the picture about how you think. Obviously you're biased because you make it so easy. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, but paint the picture on how you think SaaS founders and SaaS leaders should think about integrations in this spectrum of you just build it yourself is one end of the spectrum. I feel like somewhere in the middle is like, oh yeah, we integrate with everything. We have a Zapier plugin. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is you integrate with Paragon, and Paragon handles all the other integrations. So tell us about how founders should be thinking about integrations and how you think about that spectrum.
Yeah. So, first of all, for those who don't know too much about Paragon, high level of what we do, we are an embedded integration platform for SaaS apps. So what we do is help SaaS companies integrate their product with third-party applications like Salesforce, Slack, HubSpot, NetSuite. And we provide an SDK that you can set up in your app with a few lines of code, and then use our built-in connectors to integrate with these third-party applications in a way that's completely natively embedded into your product. So for your customers, the experience as if they were consuming a native Salesforce product integration or a native HubSpot product integration. So the way that that differs from some of the other approaches, so traditionally, of course, building integrations in-house is the status quo, and still in many ways is still today. Companies, of course, engineering teams can build integrations themselves. And what we've seen is that, first of all, not only does that require months of engineering efforts to build the initial integration, you have to, of course, read the API docs. You have to basically become an expert in an API that is completely unrelated to your products, right? It's nothing to do with your actual core products. And you kind of have to repeat that process for every one of the integrations that you're building. And as your company grows, we see companies scale to 10, 20, even 50 or 100 integrations over time. So this is a process that needs to be individually repeated for each of those integrations if you're building in-house. But not only that, building the integrations is only part of the problem that you need to solve. And as you scale to what can be dozens or hundreds of integrations over time, now your team is also responsible for the maintenance of those integrations. And as many people know, these APIs can be constantly changing over time. That can result in broken issues in production. And so really what you end up having to do is dedicating an entire team of engineers who are solely responsible to maintaining these integrations, again, becoming domain experts and experts in these APIs that are completely unrelated to your product. And so that cost of maintenance and really that cost of ownership over time can actually become much greater than just the initial cost of development. I think that's what a lot of folks may underestimate when they decide to build in-house, is that, oh, I can build this once, take me a few months, but that's okay. But really that cost of ongoing maintenance and that cost of ownership is what we've seen as one of the biggest pain points that customers come to us who don't want to have to individually manage and maintain all of these individual connections. You mentioned Zapier as another approach. And so we've seen that pretty commonly. Zapier, of course, has built, an incredible product, incredible business over the last few years. However, they sort of solve this problem in a different way. And so with Zapier, what companies end up doing is creating a Zapier connector, but then telling your customers, hey, you need to go create a Zapier account. You need to pay for that Zapier account, and then you need to set up the Zaps or the workflows basically that integrate, your products with my product. And so that is, certainly an approach that we've seen a lot of people come to us, with the experience of having used Zapier, but really the cost of, requiring your users to put in the work and really offloading that burden to your users, to your customers, who then themselves have to maintain all of these individual connections with Zapier to your application, is really what we've seen is not an optimal experience that a lot of SaaS companies try to achieve. Additionally, what we found is that with that approach, you also end up losing revenue to Zapier, and your customers end up having to pay what could be $100 or hundreds of dollars a month for Zapier and set up a completely separate account, right? Whereas that's revenue that you could be capturing yourself. We'll talk about this more, I think, later in terms of kind of integrations as a growth lever. But that's revenue that you could be capturing yourself if you were able to provide those integrations natively as a part of your product directly to your customers. So I think the real difference there is that, Paragon, relative to building integrations in-house, of course, can allow you to get to market much faster, much easier with both the initial development, but we also maintain all of the integration connectors, ourselves. So that's part of the problem that we're essentially able to offload entirely for our customers. And then relative to, a solution like Zapier, our focus is really in providing a completely native and embedded experience so that for your customers, they're not going to a third party like Zapier to set up these integrations. They're consuming these integrations as if they were a native product feature of your application.
I'll tell you how we work with over 250 SaaS companies. I'll tell you how we coach on integrations. And that's kind of, I think, the default where you're building it yourself. And maybe you can paint the picture on how you would approach it if you were using Paragon. So typically we work with growth, helping drive growth. And so what we do a lot of work on with founders is, hey, what's your ideal customer profile? Given your ideal customer profile, what system of record are they on? And where's the lion's share? And let's go pick the one integration you're going to do and do really well. And then you can get in their marketplace, forge a partnership, go to their main event, and drive growth because you have a very deep integration with them. And that's really powerful because you're getting go-to-market motions due to the fact that you deeply integrate with them. And that's a given. And we talk about that in our channel. Our audience knows about this. What I think is kind of interesting when I saw you guys is normally it's like, okay, pick one integration and go focus on it, get really good at it, and then get the go-to-market benefits of it. How is that different in the Paragon world? Like, are you building an integration with each connection you're trying to connect with, or is it just one integration, you get the rest for free? Tell us about what that looks like and if choosing goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the approach that you're describing is common, starting with maybe one or two of the most popular integrations that has the most critical mass among your customer base, and really focusing on those, at least initially. I think, part of that approach is due to some of the inherent constraints of, the time and cost and effort that's involved with even producing a single integration. Kind of makes you have to pick and choose, at least, earlier on. So, at least how that's different with Paragon. Again, at a high level, we provide a single SDK that you only need to install once, and then we have built-in connectors with what now is about 100 integrations, individual providers that you can essentially instantly connect to using our SDK and using our developer platform. So, for example, we've had customers go live with new integrations in Paragon in as quickly as a few days, under a week. And that allows our customers, first of all, to not really have to pick and choose as much. I mean, you should still be diligent about, selecting what are the most relevant integrations for your customer base. But what we found is that for, our customers, it allows them to respond to customer demand a lot more quickly and a lot more rapidly, where especially earlier on in a company's, life cycle, they may be still experimenting with different market segments, and they may still be, learning about who their target customer even is. And if they have to invest 3 or 6 months to build the Salesforce integration every time they get that request, that makes it a lot more difficult for them to, serve those customer segments and to validate, if this is a core customer segment for us. So for a lot of our customers, one of the benefits of, Paragon is the agility with which they can respond to customer demands. If they have a new customer, tomorrow request a completely different integration than maybe the ones they focused on today, that's something they can easily stand up on Paragon. You already have the Paragon platform installed in your application in a week or less. And obviously that has incredible implications for growth, the ability to go after new segments, respond to new customer demands, and of course saving a lot of that development time and effort and headache in that process.
That's cool. And I think that makes integrations as a growth strategy super interesting, because you do one integration and then automatically you connect with all these platforms. And now you can think about the go-to-market motions that you can do with any one of those platforms that you choose to go with. That it becomes a game changer in a way. And I remember I wrote the code for integrating ToutApp, my last company, into Salesforce. And the thing about integrations is you're almost hard coding the integration because you're only thinking about one use case, and those use cases change over time as you meet more customers, and it becomes a monster to maintain, as you were talking about. So you do one integration and boom, overnight you're integrated with all the platforms that you can possibly want to be integrated with, supporting all different kinds of use cases. So let's kind of switch gears now to, in that world where now I'm integrated with everything. I'm a SaaS company, I integrate with everything, and it's native. You don't have to pay for another tool. Maybe put down the Brandon, I'm the CEO of Paragon hat, and just keep the I'm the founder of a SaaS company hat. How do you think about, you guys are YC backed, you're at Series A stage, you've obviously gotten to a certain level of growth. How do you think about, what's your big principle on driving growth through integrations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that, what many people don't realize is that integrations are one of the most powerful levers for driving growth and especially efficient growth in today's market. And, let's unpack that. So first of all, research has shown that integrations have a direct impact on revenue, specifically through retention and expansion. And so ProfitWell, a few years back, they did a study that demonstrated that products with at least one integration or just one integration had as much as 15% higher retention and 30% higher willingness to pay. So that intuitively makes sense, right? And we've probably all seen that as your customers, start to use their product, if they integrate it with another product that they're already using, your product becomes inherently stickier, right? And data is flowing between your product and the other apps that they're using. It becomes harder to rip out and to replace. And so integrations really have that direct impact on improving your customer retention, reducing churn, and additionally, with the willingness to pay aspect, what we've seen, and I think we've all seen in the market, is that typically integrations are segmented to a higher tier, and oftentimes the Salesforce integration, as an example, maybe this was the case with ToutApp, is available on the enterprise tier. And that also intuitively makes sense as you're able to provide more value to your customers through integrating your product with the other tools that they're using. The value of your product is inherently greater, and they're willing to pay more for that as a result. And so what we've seen is that it results, not only in the ability to close, new business at higher value, but it's also upselling or expanding your customers who may start on a lower tier, realize that, oh, I want to integrate this product with Salesforce, and that being one of the strongest levers for driving kind of that upsell and that expansion motion, moving them on to higher tiers. So that's, I think, where we've seen clearly in the market that integrations have had, the greatest impact in terms of driving growth, through retention, through expansion, through upsell motions. And where I think that's even more important today, in the current macro environments, obviously everyone has been thinking about efficiency, and that, for many companies that we've seen, especially in SaaS, is the number one priority in 2023 and beyond, right? And so it's been well documented, I think, for a while now that it is significantly cheaper to produce new revenue from existing customers than it is from acquiring new customers. Maybe the exact number, but I think it's something like 5-10x more efficient to generate, a net new dollar from existing customers than new customers. Right. And that's even more so true with retention, right? And the cost of losing a customer due to churn is something, everyone today, I think, is increasingly focused on. How can we both better retain our existing customer base, and how can we produce more revenue from our existing customers, and really improving our overall, cost of acquisition or our cost of generating new revenue. So I think that's where, companies who figure it out to leverage their integration strategy in a way that can directly impact their upsell motions, their customer retention, and really driving, the revenue from their existing customer base, have been able to unlock the most efficient, or one of the most efficient strategies for growth, especially in today's market.
Yeah, it's so true. And I completely agree with how you've outlined it. And what I would add to that, just for everyone listening, is once you have that solid integration with 3-5 companies that are, say, $500 million ARR each, like you may be early stage, but you've integrated with Salesforce or HubSpot or Marketo or whatever, the relationship you can forge with these companies is massive. And I think that's something that a lot of early stage founders don't realize. When you have a very robust integration that can support a lot of different use cases, it gives you an advantage. So at Marketo, we were nearly $500 million in ARR, and I ran, in addition to strategy and M&A, I ran the partnership and alliances organization. And so we had a list of who are the top 100 companies that are integrated into Marketo that solve for use cases that we're never going to build. Like, it's never going to prioritize itself to our roadmap. And we had marketing budget, we had an army of people, we had our user conference with 6,000 people attending, where we would want to put integration partners on stage because they were so good. We had salespeople that never wanted to lose a deal to Pardot or Eloqua, and they said, oh, we have a partner that does this feature that you also need, and they would bring them in on the deals. And I think that's one of the things that's a lever I totally agree with the expansion, deeper kind of customer integration, charging them more on higher tiers for the integration. But then beyond that, the people you're automatically overnight integrated with, you can show up and say, hey, we have such an amazing integration. How can we work together? And in my position, I had a 30-person org. They were paid to make sure that you got access to our customer base because your integration was so good, and gave us an advantage over Pardot or Eloquent or anyone else in the market, because your functionality that you integrated into our platform made us better in the markets. And that's, I think, like super powerful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. I didn't even touch on that as much, but integrations are also an incredibly powerful growth lever through the marketing and partnerships aspect as well. Like you mentioned, especially for smaller companies who, with the Salesforce or a Slack integration, can now leverage the Salesforce customer base by becoming featured in the Salesforce App Exchange or featured in the Slack app directory, and having that visibility to the entirety of the Salesforce or Slack customer base. So as you're able to scale your integration strategy and your catalog, that just increases, I think, the number of opportunities where you can leverage those types of partnerships for growth on the marketing and discovery side as well.
So clearly, when you do integrations, you are able to increase the retention of customers. You're able to maybe charge them higher for the higher tier that has the integration or the deeper integration or the deeper functionality. You are able to increase the stickiness. You're able to expand the customer revenue because they use it more over time, using more features. You're able to get more pipeline, and you're able to get more deals by working through a partnership on the integration. The API is the first integration, and then the marketing and the partnership is the deeper integration. So all of those are net great. How does this impact, maybe, like, can you touch upon a little bit around, your fundraising? Like, does this, the way you approach integrations, does that impact how investors look at you? And maybe as a follow-on to that, does it impact M&A, the way you're integrated to big platforms? Does it affect the likelihood of getting acquired if you have a rich integration?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think at this point, investors are well aware of the importance of a robust integration strategy and the role that it plays in a company's, growth strategy. So I think that investors, especially in SaaS, are looking for that, components of any company's products or growth strategy. And I think inherently, by having more integrations, hopefully that should translate to better retention, better growth economics as well. And so inherently, you should have a stronger business and a stronger fundraising narrative in and of itself, not just with the integrations, but as a growth that's, you're able to, I think, achieve as a result of that. From an M&A perspective, yeah, I think absolutely. There's a lot of, the big SaaS companies who have venture arms now. Sounds like maybe you're a part of that as well, TK. And I think that's something where we've seen, a lot of, these smaller companies form strategic partnerships that, maybe starts with an integration, but then become, more of a strategic partner, or can become more of a strategic partner with some of these larger SaaS companies like a Salesforce or a HubSpot or a Slack. And that ends up resulting in, an M&A outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. The two acquisitions I was part of at Marketo, one was TowDot. They acquired us. We were deeply integrated into Marketo at a time when, like, I feel like the old guy saying, I was like, back in my day, we had to write my own integration. Paragon. And they had the worst API, but we still figured it out. And that gave us a leg up in the M&A conversations because we were so deeply integrated. And the same with, we acquired Visible, and they were really well integrated into Marketo as well. That was like a no-brainer. Like, and the deeper the integration, the better the value, the easier it is to acquire those companies, because 1 + 1 = 3 in those cases, for sure.
Mm-hmm. You're already able to clearly demonstrate the value that your product has to the acquiring company's customer base.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you're the SaaS founder and you're thinking about, all right, I should get my integration strategy down, how do you think about prioritizing who to focus on? Even if you get everything for free, like once we get on, we're now integrated with all 300 of these or partners that they have. How do you think about, maybe in your own go-to-market, like, who do you spend your most time on building that partnership on top of the integration that you already have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think, like everything with product strategy, our roadmap and our strategy is really prioritized based on customer demand. And I think, for most SaaS founders out there, they've already seen, of the customers that they're selling today, what are the other apps that they're using? What are the integrations that they probably explicitly asked for, and that have the most value to, that segment of your customer base. So I think, broadly speaking, that's how we prioritize, our own product strategy and, our integration strategy as well, is looking at, who are the customers that we're serving today? What are the integrations, that they need? And who are the customer segments that we want to go after next that maybe we're not, serving as much today, but we know that if we're able to support these types of integrations, that gives us a leg up in being able to, enter into some of these segments. And I think from there, honestly, talking to customers is just the most powerful thing to understand, what are the types of use cases? What is the depth of integration that's required? And I think one of the great things about Paragon is it allows you to iterate very quickly based on that customer feedback. You can start with what might be, a very simple CRM sync, let's say, with Salesforce. But as you sell into more customers who are using the Salesforce integration, you'll probably learn a lot more about other use cases, different types, of use cases that they want to achieve. And with Paragon, you're able to very quickly and very rapidly, iterate and, add new use cases, update the functionality of those integrations, and really, respond to what the depth of integration that your customers might need as you grow and over time.
As you think about your own go-to-market, I'm sure you think about like, who's my ideal customer and who's not. And so for the SaaS founders that are watching, who's like the right fit and who's the person you would tell them like, you really should just go build your own integration. Like, how would you, like, honestly, like, we're all amongst founders. Everyone's got like, even for who I work with, I'm like, there's certain people I'm like, I don't think we should work together. And I was like, hey, we should totally work together. Like, so how do you think about that? Your ideal customer for Paragon?
Yeah. So broadly speaking, we sell exclusively to B2B SaaS companies, and we're generally horizontal. We support integrations, about 100 integrations across maybe 10 or 12 different categories right now. And so, we see by nature of the market, I think, concentration in the distribution of, types of categories, types of integrations, and by extension, types of customers that we're the best fit for. I'll give you an example. I mentioned CRM and Salesforce integration quite a few times already. That's unsurprisingly our most common integration by far. And that makes sense as, the proliferation of sales enablements, marketing automation tools in the market. Each of those products have to integrate with, the top 5, top 10 CRM tools, the top 5 or 10 marketing tools. And so naturally, we see sort of this concentration of demand from a lot of the companies, who are using Salesforce, who are using CRMs, using these marketing tools. So I'd say in general, we take a horizontal approach to the market. We see those types of concentrations, in kind of the categories that are most ubiquitous or the most commonly used in the market. I'll say the types of companies that we're not the best fit for, that we don't focus on, we tend not to focus on very niche or vertical specific industries. So I'll give you an extreme example. So the medical industry, there's a few, medical records products like
those
Epic,
are basically run by the mafia, essentially.
That we'll probably never touch, those types of integration, at least not anytime soon. There's other industries like, maybe trucking or logistics, maybe like, food and beverage with like, sort of POS type of integrations. Typically, we don't focus on those, very vertical specific type of integrations. At least today, it might be something in the future that we do expand to over time. But really at this point, we found the most value in being able to provide kind of a breadth of horizontal integrations among the most common categories, which include, sales, CRM, marketing. We do a lot of productivity and communication tools. So the Microsoft, the G Suite sort of family of applications, Slack, Zoom as well.
I feel like no conversation around SaaS or integration or really anything in tech would be complete if I didn't also ask you about AI. Given large language models, given AI platforms emerging, how do you see the power of integrations coming together for building models, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the most exciting updates, we actually just released our own OpenAI integration a couple months ago.
Nice.
And I think today every company in the market is still trying to figure out exactly, the question that you asked, how can we leverage AI as part of our company's, growth and product strategy? And so our goal with our own OpenAI integration is to make it easier and more accessible for companies, who are trying to build on top of, the GPT API to be able to experiment and explore those use cases and actually deliver to the customers as well through that process. We are more broadly exploring, productized uses of AI for our own products. I can't share too much on that quite yet, but hopefully I'll be able to share more updates on that as well. But I think as far as, our product, I'll say this. I think that, we've been able to demonstrate the applications of AI in software development more broadly. We've seen that with things like GitHub Copilot, for example, which presents incredibly exciting implications for what the future of software development looks like. And so I think we're at a stage where we're starting to explore, and hopefully soon we'll be able to, show you guys what that would look like in terms of integration developments as, part of software.
Yeah, what I would love is I'm like, hey, Brandon, here's my Paragon account. Here's my GitHub repo. Go write the integration for me. And you just do it. Like that would be ideal. Integrations in seconds is what would probably be like the game changer for you guys.
That's the ideal state, right? That's the goal.
Yeah.
So I think broadly speaking, yes, we're working towards some form of that future.
Yeah, or like, here's the code to my Zapier integration, and you're like, cool, here's your Paragon integration, but you're done.
Right, exactly.
There was some questions that came up. Obviously, it's like, I'm sure you get this all the time. It's like, do you integrate with X? So maybe like, let's just answer this high level for people looking to learn more about Paragon. Specifically, all the platforms they get integrations into, if they integrate with you, where's the best place to go and learn more?
Yeah, so I saw that Patrick asked about a QuickBooks Online integration. So yes, I actually didn't mention accounting and ERP integrations are one of our most popular categories. We have about 10 or 12 accounting integrations, QuickBooks Online being, I think, by far the most popular one. And so Brian from our marketing team very kindly posted the link to our integrations catalog here in the chat. So that is the best place that you could follow along to see our full list of integrations, our full catalog, as well as some of the upcoming integrations on our roadmap.
How does Paragon prioritize integrations on their roadmap? Any threshold, whether it's by number of requests, easy to do, parameter?
Yeah, good question. So in general, as I mentioned, we prioritize our roadmap like everything on our product strategy based on customer demand. And so, we do our best as a product team to quantify, the demands in the market for different integrations based on what we're seeing from existing customers, from, new prospects that we're talking to, and just, observing trends in the market and growth of applications in different categories. So I wouldn't say if there's, any threshold. I think that, we look at both, quantitative number of requests from customers as one factor. We also look at, how neatly does this fit into our broader product roadmap and strategy, right? If it's maybe in the medical space or the healthcare integration space, that's probably not going to be as aligned and something we'd be less likely to prioritize. But I think like everything else in product, it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science, which is where the fun comes in. And I think, like I said, we learned the most from talking to our customers and really understanding, not just what are the integrations that they want to use from Paragon, but what are they trying to accomplish, right? And how that can impact, our broader integration roadmap and product strategy.
What are you most, actually, there was one more question. How are the integrations charged? As a SaaS provider, I need pricing that I can pass on to the end client. How should people think about what is the tax of Paragon on top of the price they're already charging their end user, I guess is another way to ask that question.
Yeah, so in general, we price Paragon based on a few factors. So one is number of integrations. that you're providing to your customers, as well as the usage volume, either in request volumes, so number of requests, or also number of users, so the number of your customers who are consuming the integrations through Paragon. So it can depend based on kind of the shape of your business. So some companies may be very enterprise focused. They have a fewer number of customers, very high ACV, high ticket value customers. There's some customers who may be more consumer, SaaS businesses that are more consumer shaped, who are very high volume, but maybe lower value for each individual customer. So I would say the way in which customers will price the integrations for their customers will typically depend on kind of the shape of their overall, pricing and go-to-market strategy. But if you're interested in learning more, feel free to message me after this. I'd definitely love to give you more information and chat through maybe your specific business and how we might think about that.
Awesome. So let's just start to close this out. Where can people learn more? I think we have the link in the chat, but just so we have it on the video, where can people go to learn more about Paragon, about integrating, and just all things about what you guys are working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us at useparagon.com for more general information about Paragon. You can also find me on Twitter at Brandon W. Fu. Or on LinkedIn at Brandon Fu. Feel free to send me a message, a DM on Twitter and LinkedIn. Always happy to chat with folks, help however I can.
Awesome. Brandon, this was awesome. Thank you for coming on and talking about integrations. I'm sure you love talking about this stuff. I love integrations as well, which is why as soon as I learned about you guys, I'm like, we got to have you on. So I really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge and everything that you know about integrations and being so gracious with your time.
Thank you as well, TK. I really appreciate it.